The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others. Gandhi. As educators, we are constantly in search of knowledge. Knowledge to simplify a concept, to make a lasting impression, knowledge to provide our students with the best possible learning experience. As I embarked on this journey, with the goal of earning a master's degree, I never expected to take part in a course that would have been a lifesaver my first few years teaching. I received my teaching certificate through an alternative certification program, and I never took an education course, so initially there was a bit of a trial and error teaching. Nonetheless, I taught and still teach using a variety of learning strategies and metacognitive skills that work for me as a student. In fact, because I teach in the same district I graduated from, and in a school only a mile from where I grew up, I feel this allows me to understand my students and their struggles. In fact, their socioeconomic status is not much different than mine from when I attended school. Sharing this commonality allows me to build stronger relationships with my students. They know I can relate to them. The more I read through the text, the more my students' behaviors made sense. And like I said earlier, I wish I had taken this course or a similar one when I began teaching. Also, the latter chapters in the book serve as affirmation and support the instructional practices that I employ in my teaching now. Though my lesson delivery has evolved dramatically in the past decade and a half, the essence of my teaching remains the same: provide students with a variety of learning experiences and provide ample opportunities to demonstrate mastery, most recently through the integration of technology. In fact, this is where my service learning project has led me to. Originally, I began my service project with the intention of volunteering a few hours, share some knowledge with others, and present to park visitors. I made contact with Quinta Mazatlan World Birding Center and scheduled my hours. The first part of the project consisted of me assisting the center's ecologists in the Discovery Lab during the City of McAllen's Monarch Festival, hosted at Quinta Mazatlan. The lab was set up with different learning centers for children. These stations allow children to draw, create, observe, and interact with the expert in the praying mantis zoo. I was there basically to help answer questions and guide children in their learning journey. It was here where I got to see the different stages of cognitive development in the learning preferences of children at certain ages as described in the text. Smaller children were more entertained by a Build-A-Bug station in which they could use modeling clay to create their own insect. Those in the pre-operational and concrete operational seemed to enjoy the drawing and the modeling clay stations. The hands-on concept was very appealing to children. For those in the adolescence and older age range, the main attraction were the microscopes with actual specimens, the mountain bobcat and coyote, the shedding corn snake, and the unicorn praying mantis, who spent a great deal of time devouring crickets. These stations presented a more complex notion of science and the natural world, and thus appeared more engaging. Another observation was that the students weren't really motivated to draw their insect. Upon noticing this, I decided to suggest adding some references such as stuffed insects or other models. I also added drawing prompts to help students. This changed the entire outlook on that station. More children took part in it and drew their insects based on the prompts. Although I wasn't the lead facilitator in the Discovery Lab, the teacher in me prompted me to check for understanding and scaffold information for students who seemed to have questions. At the same time, I noticed that although the lead facilitator in the Discovery Lab was an insect and ecology expert, he lacked the pedagogy to make content comprehensible for struggling learners. I noticed this while making another observation. Children who seemed to come from a slower socioeconomic level seemed to be less familiar with the whole exploration and inquiry-based learning process. Those children who asked questions about feeding habits or interesting facts were usually accompanied by parents who also asked questions and were actively participating in the conversation with their children or with us. Those children who merely colored or played with the clay or simply observed were accompanied by a parent who was more concerned with his or her phone than being an active participant. Simply put, social differences made a huge impact on how the child interacted with what was being talked about in our session. At the end of the day, and after debriefing and taking part in a very intentional conversation regarding the future of my service project, I began to develop a lesson that merges technology with nature. I ventured in wanting to develop immersive learning environments using augmented and virtual realities, but then decided that at this point I need to start with something more concrete and less ambitious, basically due to budget and time restrictions. With the center staff, we brainstorm ideas on creating summer camps for boys and girls, but that project is yet to be further developed. At this point, I have created a lesson that will include a guided excursion through the trails of Quinta Mazatlan. Using iOS apps such as GarageBand, Photos, Keynote, Clips, and Tayasui sketches for schools, students will create digital stories, documentaries, or public service announcements. The deeper I have gotten into these discussions with ecology experts and other educators, the more concrete the ideas become. Initially, I simply wanted to add QR codes and allow students to consume information. That idea, however, has transformed into a unit where students become curators and creators as they develop content from their park experience. As Woolfolk pointed out, learning is more than receiving and processing information transmitted by teachers or texts. Rather, students must actively participate in their own personal construction of knowledge. With this in mind, and as I reflect on what the text says, I am able to make connections of concepts or instances that were at one point a bit abstract. There is clarity on the path that I am on as an educator. Simply helping students memorize information is not learning. Helping them pass a test is not learning. Teaching them to learn on their own and construct their own knowledge using a variety of strategies and skills, that's learning. Yes, there are many factors that hinder the learning process. Problems at home, social pressures, learning disabilities, poverty, you name it. The point is, as educators, we must find ways to connect our teaching with what matters to our children. We need to develop learning experiences that help close the learning, digital, and most importantly, the opportunity gaps. We need to stay relevant and be innovative. We need to collaborate with others in and out of our field. And most importantly, we must reflect on our practices. This allows us to evaluate our affective, cognitive, and behavioral areas of teaching, thus making us better teachers.